Throughout this training, or at any time you need support, there are many ways to contact us. You can follow us on all major social media platforms or email us directly via our website, or you can click the Cancel Connect icon shown at the bottom of this slide on our website to book a consultation with one of our experts. Chapter 1, Project Selection. Most organizations and most functions within organizations are constantly working on multiple efforts to make things better. These efforts may be formal or informal, but they must be managed carefully to ensure that our efforts are not wasted. Selecting improvement projects means that we identify areas to improve, strategically plan the resources and timing, and ensure that we have strong leadership support throughout the project lifecycle.
One of the biggest decisions that any organization will have to make is selecting projects they will undertake. As a Green Belt, you will be responsible for leading and participating in an improvement project. However, you may or may not be involved in the selection of your project. Whether you are a part of your project selection or not, it's important that you have a good understanding of how projects are selected. So not all organizations have a formal structure in place to select projects. As a matter of fact, most of them that we've dealt with in the past don't. But whether it's formal or not, decisions are being made. And the more explicit and deliberate the methods, the better the return. With a bit of rigor and structure, we can minimize the amount of wasted time and efforts. In most organizations, people work extraordinarily hard with very little improvement in the end. So whether formal or not, large or small company, the steps are, or at least should be, the same.
To formalize these steps, we start by establishing a cycle to support and manage the critical decisions and plan for the monitoring that must occur. When we establish a management or leadership cycle, we can plot the major milestones throughout the year. First, we look at the large picture of quarters and then by month. Starting in this example, in the October-November timeframe, the leaders of the organization will establish the direction of the company or the strategic plan. This includes identifying the key business drivers, factors such as growth, revenue, profitability, productivity, customer satisfaction, employee engagement, etc.
After the strategic plan is set at the top levels and moving clockwise around the map, goals can be established. With goals in place, the organization can deploy efforts to identify gaps and opportunities for improvement. There are usually many ideas and options for improvement, so the next milestone is to select the projects that will be executed in the next year. Projects can be initiated. The projects don't all launch at the same time. It will depend on urgency, team availability, other efforts going on at the same time, and many other factors.
With the cycle in place, the different levels of the organization, for example, corporate, regional, the site level, at the department level, will have a clear plan for when these major decisions must be made. And with that solid foundation, each level of the organization can participate as needed.
So in your workbook, you will see a diagram of the leadership cycle. Think about your own situation. Do these different steps occur, formally or informally perhaps? When do they occur? Use the circles to indicate where the steps should fit into the cycle.
Let's dive into the gap or opportunity analysis in a little more detail. This is the step where we identify ideas for projects. Identifying areas for improvement can be a very daunting process. There are many sources of ideas which include customers, measures, long-term goals, employee feedback, etc. And there are multiple ways to approach identifying these opportunities. Here, we'll explore the key factors involved in this type of analysis.
The most critical factor in determining where we have gaps or opportunities is current performance. Current performance is a clear measure that tells us how we are doing with regards to our most important metrics. These typically include productivity, quality, cost, delivery or timeliness, safety, security, and people. Knowing our current performance allows us to make a comparison of the desired state. This is where we identify gaps or opportunities. This desired state can be a target that has been established or the customer's expectation for the particular performance metric.
Or we can compare our current performance to the potential performance or the best possible performance for this process. For example, consider the time it takes you to drive to work. To understand the potential for your drive to work, you would need to determine how long it would take you in a perfect scenario. All green lights, no interruptions or delays, closest parking spot is open, etc. Each of these three elements requires a significant amount of effort to understand.
Project selection might occur at any level of the organization. It all depends on the structures in place and the overall alignment and support around continuous improvement in the organization. If the organization is working as a whole, they will establish a cycle to support and manage the critical decisions and monitoring that must occur to select and support improvements.
However, if this level of coordination doesn't exist, it might be up to a function, a team, a work group, or even an individual to identify potential areas for improvement and then select a specific project. Regardless of the level where the project selection occurs, the same concepts and guidelines apply. Of course, the greater the alignment and support from leadership, the greater the chances of success and the higher the impact.
The objective of a more structured approach to select project is to ensure that we experience a good return on our investment. Improvement initiatives or projects require resources and time, and it's easy to lose track and end up with little to nothing in return. For your Green Belt certification, it is recommended that you apply what you are learning to an actual improvement project. The type of project that you select depends greatly on the type of leadership support and participation that you have, as well as your own learning and improvement objectives.
If you're part of a larger organization with multiple functions participating in the improvement, you may be focusing on improving a larger segment of the overall business. Using a simple manufacturing example, your project might be focused on improving from the time the raw materials are received to the time the finished goods are shipped. This requires participation, cooperation, and leadership support from all the functions or processes involved.
Perhaps we have participation support from only a couple of departments. Our scope might be a lot smaller. For example, focused from the time the materials are unloaded to the time they are put on the conveyor belt. You might be a part of a team from a single department with functional leadership or management support only. For example, the project might be to increase the volume processed or decrease errors for the department. In this case, it will be very difficult to improve upstream or downstream handoffs, but you should focus on the process that you do control.
If you are a team of one, an individual contributor, you may not have any specific leadership support. Maybe leadership is unaware, not interested, or just not supportive. In this case, your project can focus on improving your own productivity, the quality of your own work or handoffs, or minimizing your own waste. And finally, you have the option of working on a personal project. You will derive support from stakeholders such as family, friends, your own circle. You might decide to use your Greenbelt skills to improve your household, the community, or your own health and well-being.
For example, you might decide to decrease household waste, things like food waste, household costs, improve recycling. You might focus on improving your health, for example, reduce your weight, improve your blood pressure, get off prescription meds, or you could decide to improve efficiency or results of homeschooling. We want to make sure that the project is focused on a significant benefit. However, significant benefit is a relative factor and depends on how your situation and your scope defines it. The point is that when focused on improvement, we can find opportunities at any level and in any situation. Learning the tools and skills of a green belt is best with a project, but it's not required.
As you learned in Yellow Belt training, there are different types of projects. A typical green belt project follows the DMAIC method and is focused on root cause analysis. That means that the cause and the solution are not known. A good green belt project should meet the following criteria: Number one, there should be an observable problem or gap in an existing process. Number two, the root cause of the problem is unknown or uncertain. Number three, the benefits are significant. And lastly, the data to understand the current situation and the root cause is either already available or it can be gathered.
Disqualifiers for a Greenbelt project include when urgent action is needed and there is no time for analysis, when the root cause is obvious or the solution predetermined, for example, a piece of equipment or software is obsolete and there is a replacement already selected. And the last disqualifier is if there are low potential benefits. A root cause analysis project takes some time and resources to do it well. So we have to watch out for our project ROI, or return on investment, and make sure that the project is worth doing. There are usually many options for improvement projects. The skill is knowing which to choose and then, of course, how to get the desired results.
The first step in project selection is to establish the criteria of what makes a good project. This has to come from leadership or the decision makers and defines what's most important. It's usually a combination of the benefits and resources or time required for the improvement. With the criteria established, the leaders draft an initial definition of the projects. For example, decrease check-in wait time at the Chicago location, or increase packaging yield at the Memphis office, or increase employee retention in North America, or improve the participation in the community youth programs.
With the potential projects identified, they can be evaluated against the established criteria. Depending on the resources available, the projects can be selected and the planning can begin. One aspect of this planning is to determine the type of project, as they are not all the same. Whether a project has been selected for you by your organization, or you are working as an individual contributor or on a personal project, selecting a project starts by establishing the criteria. We will introduce the first tool of many. It is used to make selection or a choice when you have multiple options, and the best choice is not completely clear or not totally agreed upon. This tool is called the criteria matrix.
Let's say we're planning a family vacation and we've identified 3 potential options of where to go: Hawaii, Japan, or Paris. And we've had some discussions about our criteria. That is, what are we basing our decision upon? The criteria will always be a combination of what's meaningful to you and what's manageable for you and your team. That means that our selection needs to be meaningful for us. Maybe that means relaxation or adventure or unique experiences. And we have to balance that with manageable. That means that it's doable given our specific limitations.
For our example, we've decided that the main criteria are 1. Cost or budget. 2. It must be good for families with small children. And 3. The travel time shouldn't be too long.
Putting our options together along with our criteria for selecting is the basis of this tool. We'll use this simple table format to guide us in a meaningful discussion towards our decision.
The first step is agreeing upon the importance of each of our criteria, and we will do this by assessing and assigning each criteria a weight. We'll use a scale of 1, 3, and 5. 1 is least important, 5 is the most important. In our example, we decided that family friendly was the most important, budget was moderately important, and the travel time was the least critical. It's more of a nice to have or a tiebreaker.
Next, we evaluate each option to see how it relates or compares to each criteria. So the decision makers discuss, and we capture a brief summary so that we all understand what was discussed. Each option and criteria is rated on a scale of 1, 3, 5. 1 is least desirable, and 5 is the most desirable.
For example, looking at Hawaii for families, because there are lots of activities for kids and there's a nightly luau and a kids club at the resort. We rated the Hawaii options as a 5 for the criteria of family friendly. If we multiply the rating of 5 times the weight of the family friendly criteria, also a 5, we get a score of 25 for that option and criteria. Discussing our way through the remainder of the combinations, we do the math and see that Hawaii gets the highest score.
So that last step, as with any tool, is to evaluate the results and see if it makes sense. What if going to Hawaii makes no sense? Maybe you didn't want hot weather and you don't care for the beach. This indicates that you missed a critical criteria. A meaningful vacation for you means that it does not include the beach or hot weather. One of the many benefits of using this tool is that it also exposes assumptions. It was just assumed that we had all the criteria set when in fact we missed a big one. When this happens, and it does happen a lot, the team must evaluate whether they have appropriately identified and weighted their criteria and then update their assessment.
Now try one for yourself. In your workbook is a simple criteria matrix with light gray text to walk you through filling it out. Think about an example from your own life, a major decision or a major purchase. For example, picking a college, buying a house, choosing a job. First identify your top 3 criteria and give them each a weight, a 1, a 3 or a 5. And then list 3 of the options that you had across the top. Think through each option for each criteria and write a brief description on how that option meets your criteria. Then rate it a 1, a 3 or a 5. Then do the math. Multiply the rating by the weight for that criteria to get a score. Continue until you fill out the table. Add the scores for each option to get a total score for each. Pause the video now to give it a try. How did that work out? Any surprises? Now it's time to get familiar with the criteria matrix template.
Now that you understand the concept and the basic construction of the criteria matrix, we'd like to introduce you to your first Greenbelt template. Throughout this training, you will see the Excel icon, which indicates that there is a canceled form or a template provided for you. These templates are designed to guide you and walk you through the steps and key milestones throughout your entire DMAIC project.
Just as you downloaded the course workbook, you will have access to course templates for your future use. Along with each template is an example of a completed form. You do not need to download or open the template file during the course. All forms and templates are included in your workbook for your learning. Now let's walk through this template step by step, and you can follow along with the form in your workbook.
We start by solidifying the criteria. For project selection, the criteria falls in 3 categories: impact or benefit, resources required, and then the change readiness of the people involved. Because this criteria matrix template was created specifically for project selection, the criteria is already established. However, for every situation, the weight or the importance given to each criteria must be discussed and agreed upon by the decision makers.
Because this criteria matrix template was created specifically for project selection, the criteria is already established. However, for every situation, the weight or importance given to each criteria must be discussed and agreed upon by the decision makers. The criteria column is grouped by category. Impact, that's our meaningful category, and resources, that's our manageability, and change readiness. It's important to do this weighing before examining the options. If we discuss the options first, we tend to tailor the weights of the criteria to meet our favorite option, and it's not as objective.
In the template, each criteria has a note with a definition. This is to help the team to understand the meaning of the criteria. On our templates, any light green box indicates that there's a drop-down for easy data entry. For each criteria, the team will select a weight of 1, 3, or 5. The next step is to identify the options. In the form, there are spaces for 3. However, you can copy and paste the columns and add more options as needed. In these spaces, we enter a brief description or a short name of the potential project. For example, call center accuracy, or cycle time reduction, or software bug reduction.
The next step is to evaluate each potential project by comparing them to our criteria. Each light yellow cell indicates that it's a place for free-form text. You have freedom to write in whatever you want. This is where the team captures a summary of the relation of that option to that specific criteria. The light green field is where we indicate the rating, and the grey box with the orange text indicates that it's a calculated field. The cell will automatically be populated once the rating is entered.
Continue filling in the summaries in the yellow cells and the ratings for each until all cells are completed. Once completed, we can see the priority based on the total scores for each option.
The grey cells with the orange text will show the total score for each option. This is where the team must pause and assess whether the score makes sense. If we have accurately assigned weights to the criteria and accurately rated each option against that criteria, our score should point us to the best option.
When an option is selected, we can move on to the final step, and that is to create a business case for the selected project. A business case provides justification for undertaking a project. Referring to the criteria and where this project highly scored, the project sponsor can draft a summary of why this project is important. A business case should include the broad statement of area of concern or the opportunity, the expected impact or benefit of the potential improvement, the expected impact or cost or risk of not improving. It should provide a link to the organizational strategy, to customers, or to corporate values. And the business case is drafted and owned by the project sponsor.
The business case will be carried through to many other important forms and templates for this project. It's a foundational element that will align and guide the team throughout the project. The title icon on the lower left side of the screen indicates that the business case on this form is the master data for this field and will be auto-populated in future forms and templates that the team will use. This will eliminate the need to enter the business case multiple times and will ensure that all info stays correct as the data evolves. Any updates that need to be made to the business case as the project develops will be made here in this master data or originated field. And in your workbook is your first of many one-point lessons. These one-point lessons will be very valuable as you work through your current and future projects as a memory jogger to refresh you on what you learned during this training.
From the project team's perspective, it's important to know that a lot of work has gone into the project even before you ever heard about it. And while you may or may not be involved in the upfront part of this cycle, it's important to understand the steps that had to come together for that idea to become an actual project.
So we've walked through the steps for project selection at a high level and have gone in detail on the main tool, which is the criteria matrix. Pause at this time to determine your focus for this training. If you have a project identified already, then we suggest that you complete the criteria matrix and see if you can validate or justify the project against the project selection criteria.
If you haven't even thought about an actual improvement project yet, then this is a great time to start. Having a project will give you the experience of applying the Greenbelt tools as you learn them. And if you need additional support along the way, we're just a couple clicks away and our team is ready to assist you with any questions. The icon at the bottom left of the screen indicates that you'll need to have a completed criteria matrix for the skills demonstration portion of your certification. You can use your project or any example to show that you understand the tool. If you complete these tools as they're introduced, you'll have your Greenbelt portfolio of evidence all ready to go when you complete each module. In the Excel file of Greenbelt Define Phase templates, you'll find this template along with an example of a completed form. This concludes the first chapter. Take some time now to review your notes and take a quick quiz on Chapter 1, Project Selection.
It has been our sincere pleasure being with you through this part of the training. And we thank you for your dedication to creating a better workplace and an environment that you can truly enjoy.